Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're specifically going to talk about overt communication about Dungeons and Dragons campaigns and why I oppose it. So, one, I'm incredibly blessed right now. I'm in a high spot on Dungeons and Dragons. I'm in the middle of a active, running, engaged campaign, right? So I had this about 2.5 years ago. We ran one of the best campaigns I've ever seen. However, I think I might leave that campaign in the dust. And the reason why is with this new Lego, with the power of Lego, Dungeons and Dragons is reaching heights that was not possible beforehand. Lego is extremely powerful. Basically, what's really interesting is I'm kind of, you know what? Let me tell what I'm going to talk about. I think it's a mistake to overtly discuss to ask players what they want in a Dungeons and Dragons game, and the reason why is, one, you already have an answer. Okay, if you said, "Hey, I'm running D&D 5e," you already know, right? And they said, "Yes, I want to play that." You already know what they want, like halfway there. They want traditional fantasy, right? And they are rejecting OSR. They're like, I don't want old school crap. I don't want to have to blow dust off my books. I don't want any of your prejudice, right? Except for Kelsey Dion. She actually actively fights against that within the OSR space, which is why she's a hero and the king of OSR right now. And the king of indie, because if you didn't know, I love this fact. This is my favorite fact from my favorite tabletop role-playing game fact from... This is my absolute favorite tabletop role-playing fact from 2023. Kelsey Dion's Shadow Dark outsold Tales of the Valiant, which was the cutting edge of D&D Begone and was supposed to replace Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's that garbage game that Cobble Press plopped out the other end in order to, as a direct response to the 2023 Manic Panic. One thing actually, Tales of the Valiant is not out yet. The Orc OGL is out, but what's really interesting is everybody got mad in January and then nobody delivered. They actually delivered, but they delivered crap. Thank goodness, right? So all of the vitriol just kind of dissipated, right? All right, let me stay focused here. Don't overtly communicate. So let's get into this, okay? So right now, my FLGS game is really powering toward defeating my last campaign, which had no less than 10 players in it, across the 2.5 years, and multiple dungeon masters and multiple, multi-world spanning stories. But this one is really shaping up, and I think the players at the table are better, and than I had previously, definitely. Not from a skill perspective, from a better person perspective. They want to engage as human beings. There's a little more kindness and tolerance in their heart than the old group, and in some cases a lot more kindness and tolerance. And I will say, I'm not the most kind and tolerant person. I definitely am I'm more intense and adamant than I am kind and tolerant. Just want to say, so I was part of that problem too. So I think this group is shaping, but Lego is so powerful. And there's always this question of theater of the mind or miniatures. And what is incredible is Lego takes the speed of theater of the mind and the adaptability of theater of the mind and puts it into physical form, right? So if you use just standard colored mini figures and then just put Lego weapons in their hands, you can depict classes incredibly quickly and cheaply, right? And doing that with miniatures is outrageously expensive, right? You can get a Lego minifig for $1. You can get a weapon for $1. You can't get it's $30 to get a custom mini from Hero Forge, right? Lego is absolutely unparalleled and I'll tell you right now, nobody knows this yet. This is why Lego and D&D click together. They are multipliers for each other, right? Lego without D&D, crap you put on a shelf, never tells a story, okay? D&D without Lego, outrageously expensive miniature structures that take entire basements to hold all the different parameters of miniatures, and literally get you close to a divorce. And this is not a joke. I know a guy who spent thousands of dollars on miniatures. His entire basement is crammed full of tubs of miniatures because he's got, 20 skeletons with a sword and 20 skeletons. Crap is all over. It cost him a fortune, and it didn't work, right? He has so much crap and so little space to cram it into, right? And it's actually not crap, but there's so much of it that digging out the stuff he needs does a couple things, right? One, it takes a lot of his house. It takes a lot of his money, right? Which his wife doesn't like. And they are still married, but I don't think they kind of scraped through, man, right? And then even beyond that, you have this issue of he gets out 20 skeletons with arrows in their hands, but the 20 skeletons with swords in their hands are buried in railroads, right? Whereas I can make the same, I can quickly actually visually show everybody, and people know what's happening. Whereas theater of mind is a myth. I don't think people really understand what's happening with theater of mind. And theater of mind is a rook sale, right? It's dungeon masters like, I'm super smart and I'm going to do theater of mind and everybody understands. And so many people ask overtly, how was the game? And they're like, well, Bob, it was great. Thank you very much. And then, when they're at the diner, they're like, oh my gosh, did you understand what was happening with the roper? I kind of moved toward him and I felt I should have been able to reach him, but I wasn't, and that's, and the reality is the overt questioning, like the only metric you have on if your Dungeons and Dragons campaign is working is if people continue to show up and are engaged, right? And what is engagement, right? Well, I'm going to tell you what engagement is, all right? So I'm running my FLGS game. It starts in Eberron with one player. The other player invites 4 other players. 4 other players show up at the table, right? We start in Eberron. They go through a portal and end up in Kryn. That was my mistake. The players did not want to go to Kryn, but I don't know that because I don't overtly ask them, where do you want to go? The reason I took them to Kryn was the main player said, my background is in Strixhaven. So I'm like, oh, okay, your background is in Strixhaven. Narratively, that means you want a realm-spanning campaign, right? That was not correct. The player is extremely mechanical, right? Like builds, powerful mechanical builds. And they needed the Strixhaven Initiate feat in order to get power. They weren't doing it for narrative reasons, right? I don't see, people will say, I don't see color. I don't know how true that is. I don't see mechanics. All I see is narrative, right? If you do something, I'm going to assume you're doing it for a narrative reason, right? Or I'm going to hope, right? And so they ended up in Kryn, and they didn't engage with anything in Kryn because they didn't want to be there, right? So I'm like, okay, they want this taken back to Eberron, and so I did. I literally took them back to Eberron. It was exciting because, first of all, where are we in the D&D canon books, right? Eberron, D&D 5e, Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, to D&D 5e, to get back to Eberron, Spelljammer. Oh yeah, right? Like, we are literally working our way through the books, right? But now I'm like, okay, we're back in Eberron. That's the last anybody wants to go anywhere. But the main player is like, oh my gosh, these Warforged are really being treated badly. I want to take them to Strixhaven. And I was like, why do you want to take them to Strixhaven? This player played in my campaign 2.5 years ago, and he said, I have a player character, a Warforged, who worshipped the god of a Warforged cleric, who worships the god of Moradin. Yes, the dwarf god. Complex, right? Narrative. Strong narrative there, right? And Reckoner actually made a space outside the campuses of the Strixhaven University, of the Strixhaven School of Mages, for displaced Warforged, right? And so these Warforged in Eberron that are not doing well, we can give them a space where they're free of war, right? I'm like, wow, And so the player is saying now, I was super excited because I have an entire set of cards. I have an entire set of structure that was built for this Strixhaven campaign that we had a blast with. The players went from, and you'll find videos right here on the channel that talks about them, right? I got the receipts on what I talk about, right? So you will find, and so you will see this Strixhaven game, and the Strixhaven game, what blew me away was we actually went through level 20 in that game. So the player characters actually went from, it was astounding. The player characters actually were students, then became adventurers with their Strixhaven degrees, went out, adventured, and then returned as professors. It was a level 4 to level 20 campaign, right? I'm very proud of it. And what blew my mind was the player, my initiating player on this campaign is like, I'm going back to see my player character from the Strixhaven campaign with this player character, and my player character will talk to that player character, and these Warforged will be helped by that Warforged Cleric who served Moradin, and that player character's name was Reckoner, and my current player character's name is Holly. That is, and what astounded me was the player actually recounted what happened in the other campaign a year and a half ago perfectly, better than I remembered it, right? And what's really exciting is, like, we write these stories on the hearts and minds of our players, right? And you don't, and I don't expect that every player is going to remember what happened in a campaign a year and a half ago, but we do, right? And that is engagement, right? So here's the kicker. All of this came about because I did not say to the player, why do you have that Strixhaven? Are you doing that because you want it? I assumed, and I went forward, right? And the thing is, I think overt communication, constantly asking people, right, about what they want is very unappealing, right? And I'll even say it, like, if you have a partner, right, if you have a romantic partner, right, asking, what do you want to happen now? Nothing is less exciting, right? Simply taking action, moving forward, and it literally keeps the adventure in the game. Whereas if you do what Jenny D says, talk to your players, talk to your players, talk to your players, and every other squawking parrot on the internet saying, talk to your players, Mike Shea, right? It's bunk. It is absolute bunk, right? It says, I don't have a vision, right? When I went, there's a pizzeria near me, right? You go to the pizzeria Badia, and I sit down, and I was like, I would like a pepperoni pizza, please. They're like, yes. Dude sits down and he says, I want pepperoni and sausage. And they're like, and they said, oh, I'm sorry. He said, I want pepperoni and sausage and onions. And they said, 2 toppings, right? And he's like, well, I want 3. And they're like, just put them on there. And they're like, nope, we have a process, right? You're coming here, right? You're coming to this table. We are going to tell you, we're going to let you choose from the menu, but we're going to set the menu, right? That is top tier Dungeon Master. You set the menu. They can choose from the menu. You don't say, what do you want? I can go back in the kitchen and make anything, right? It's not exciting. It's not adventurous, right? And so I truly believe overt conversation about your D&D campaign is poison to actual unpredictability, to actual adventure, and to actual roaming. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.